Hi, everybody. Welcome to Maitri Plays Games. I am Maitri. We're gonna do something a little bit different today. I regularly have a thing at the start of all my videos saying, if my speech is difficult to understand because of the SCA2, you should turn on the subtitles. Today is Ataxia Awareness Day. That is the 25th of September. And I want to talk a little bit about Spinocerebellar ataxia, which is SCA. I have type 2. There are multiple types, like 50 or 60 last time I looked, something like that. It is a genetic condition that I got from my father. He got from his mother. It's a rare disease, so there isn't a ton of funding and research about this. A rare disease has an academic meaning. It means that there are a certain number of people in the world that have it, and it's a relatively low number. And what that effectively means is that there's not a lot of funding that goes into research around it. There's not a lot of funding that goes into figuring out symptom management or anything like that. Kind of just have to make do with accessibility stuff that's been developed for other purposes, and you kind of just do the best you can. I've always thought that if you have privilege, then you are responsible in using that privilege as best you can. And I have the privilege of having a fairly strong ability to communicate. I have the privilege of being educated in the English language. I have the privilege of having a small audience on YouTube. Generally speaking, the world has proven to be pretty apathetic over the last 15 years or so. And so I guess this is for the 4 people for whom it would make a difference to understand that, like, we're not a fucking monolith. Disabled people aren't a monolith. I'm certainly not like the disability Lorax. Like, I don't speak for all the cripples. And like, you have to laugh at the jokes at me because that's how I cope, and you owe that to me as my friend. So, you know. My purpose today is to build awareness and to point you to a couple of charities, because as a disease, it could use your attention and funding. I generally script my videos pretty thoroughly. I have not scripted today's, so we're just gonna talk and we'll see how it goes. I have a list of things I want to get into. Preemptive apologies for if I get like emotional about stuff, because I don't usually talk about this kind of thing. I kind of just live my life, because what else are you gonna do? I'm really not like someone that seeks out comfort or anything. Like, I don't feel comfortable doing that, so I'm gonna try and be as matter of fact about things as I can be. But because hopefully people who are actually watching this aren't like cruel sociopathic individuals, your instinct is going to be empathy and pity and whatever else, because that's just like normal being a halfway decent human. But know that I'm not trying to elicit that from you on purpose or anything like that. What we're gonna broadly talk about today is the impacts of living with an illness that only manifested well into my adulthood. So basically, I had already kind of figured out how I was gonna be an adult, like what kind of mattered to me and what kind of behavior I was wanting to do, what was important to me mentally and emotionally, and like how I navigated the world physically. And then at about 35, I had to change basically everything. So we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about the mental health impacts, because that's a piece I feel like doesn't really get talked about. What does really? We're gonna talk about how it impacts my work. We're gonna talk about how it impacts my hobbies, tabletop diagnosis, and getting medical care, accessibility, tools, and technology, my sex life, family planning, financial planning, and like I'm gonna talk about stuff that I can kind of think about, I guess, like remember. But if there are any questions, my email is in the description box. Please shoot me an email if you'd like to keep it private. Or if you have a question you're comfortable with it being public, feel free to leave it in the comments of this video. And I will answer it as candidly as I can. That's my commitment to you. So very briefly, once again, Spinocerebellar ataxia, and I have type 2, is a no-cure, symptom management only, ongoing illness. It's a deterioration of the cerebellum, which is a part of your brain that controls muscles. So basically, all my voluntary and involuntary muscles, they just aren't controlled as strongly as they used to be anymore. How this manifests is that I am increasingly susceptible to pneumonias because my esophagus and my the flap or whatever that's called, like that doesn't work as well as it ought to. So sometimes food particles can get into my lungs and they're not supposed to be there. Like your body is supposed to manage it so that like when you eat, food does not go into your lungs. It's one tract, and this muscle like opens and I don't know. I'm not a fucking scientist. I just know it doesn't work as well as it ought to. And it's an involuntary muscle. The voluntary muscles are my hands, my legs, my tongue. My vocal box is a hybrid of voluntary and involuntary. That's kind of why I have a hover mic on an arm, because I struggle with always, like, I've always been kind of loud, but I struggle with controlling my volume as much as I used to. Because I can't really control those muscles anymore. So, and that kind of thing. So, yeah, walking around the house, like right now, I'm using a walker more or less full time, and even that is getting increasingly difficult. I use a manual wheelchair outside full time as well. My father at this stage was in an electric wheelchair full time. I kind of don't keep us wake up players. I have tried to use an electric chair, his old one actually, and like it's not great. Like I said before, like you kind of just have to make do with what's available, and like I don't have the dexterity to have fine control on the joystick to move that electric chair around. So that's why I'm using a manual chair. I feel like I would like, in whatever small way, to actually use my body a little bit more. Because I'm not like someone that runs marathons and, you know, whatever else. Like, I use my body to interact with the world, to be like a sexual creature. Like, those are the ways I interact with the world. I don't I'm not an athlete. I've never been an athlete. So it's really about like you used to use your body a certain way and then all of a sudden that way stopped. So yeah, I just don't want to like fucking do my eyeliner again. Oh, also I fucking love fake jewelry. The only thing I can really kind of manage anymore is rings. So I have been doing a lot of like, I have a lot of rings. I fucking love big earrings. Like I used to say, you know, the bigger the hoops, the bigger the dreams. And unfortunately, I can't really do that anymore. So I just have like standard earrings on because I have a really hard time like putting on the jewelry, that kind of thing. So that's part of the mental health stuff. It's pretty like screwed up because like no one's gonna tell you that like your disability is the reason for you not being hired, but like I'm not stupid. I can read between the lines. And yeah. So my not being able to go places, even though those places are the ones that are inaccessible, that is a detriment. So I'm out of a job and I have been out of a job for a long time and I work incredibly hard. Like, there's not a lot of things that I will say definitively and without caveat that I am good at, but I'm good at work. I'm a very strong professional asset, and that is partially is because I have frequently been in a lot of male dominated spaces, and so I've kind of learned how to like manage big personalities and still get ahead in a way that sort of doesn't make too many people resentful of me. So I'm pretty strong asset, but as my so in the early stages of me having Ataxia, it was an invisible degenerative illness, and that was it had its merits and its demerits because like the reality was that I just physically wasn't able to do certain things, but I didn't look like I had any limitations. Like I looked able-bodied, and so that was a good thing and a bad thing. So my goal, I had a professional goal which was incredibly ambitious, I realized, but I was on my way to it, which was to be a vice president by 45. I was a director at 38, so I was on my way. Now I've had to really step back because I physically cannot go to many offices, and we're at a point, unfortunately, that my partner also needs work that is incredibly flexible, if not 100% more, because he is my primary caregiver. And as someone who is very type A and quite independent, not great to have someone sort of help you get your coffee in the morning or help you do your fucking makeup or help you do some grooming. I have a lot of knowledge about desirability and desirability, like identities and politics and that kind of thing. Some of you may know I actually used to have a YouTube channel about makeup and beauty, like back in the day. So I'm not gonna lie, I am fairly vain. Like I said, one of the ways that I used to use my body was sexually. So to kind of move into sort of how it impacts my sex life, I still have those needs. But I feel super undesirable most days because the person that I sort of have to not have to, but the person that I turn to get those needs fulfilled is also the person that is helping me get to a state where I can kind of feel a little desirable. And unfortunately, as a woman, desirability is a big part of what society will say is what makes you feminine. For people to see you a certain way, interesting, charming, attractive, all those things, if you aren't those things, then are you even really? So there's that is again part of the mental health part of it. I don't even know. I don't know how to finish that sentence, so let's just move on. Moving on to family planning. Family planning, I have never really wanted kids, but it's a whole other thing when, like, medically it becomes something that you have to kind of contend with, and this kind of dovetails into the diagnosis part of it, and really kind of speaks to how society views women. So I always kind of knew in the back of my head that, like, I had this, and I even told my partner pretty early on, like years before I got our diagnosis, that this is potentially something that I might have. And we were together for close to a decade before we got married, even. And we've been married close to a decade now. When I got diagnosed, the way it works in Canada, which is where I am, is that you go to your standard doctor, like whoever it is, and they will basically write up a referral for you. Because what I have is a rare disease, there's only fucking one doctor and his assistant in like 5 or 6 hours drive from where I am. Like, maybe there's some in other provinces, but like where I am, there's pretty much just the one doctor. So the referral for him to do the test, which is, it's somewhere that my dad went to as well, so it would have been, I ended up going, I have been going, anyway, I'm jumping ahead. But either way, the doctor gave me the referral for him, and that would have been about year and a half, 2 years before he could even do a test for me. However, the doctor also gave me a referral for a high-risk pregnancy clinic. And apparently, as a woman, if you want to have children, that's way more important than, if your brain just stops working. But, So I went to the high-risk clinic, and my doctor told me pretty, it's like, just fucking tell me you want to have kids. Tell me you want to, and like, I basically had to lie to my medical provider to get a test. Because that was, like, they had to think I was planning on having a kid before they would even test me with this. So they tested me. I was on a work trip in Philadelphia. Actually, I remember this very fucking well. I was on a Hyatt in Philadelphia when they called me. It was between sessions at this conference I was at. It was an energy conference. Anyway, they called me. I was up in my room just kind of freshening up before I had to go back downstairs for lunch or another conference or fucking whatever. This woman calls me and says, hey, can I speak to Mind the Fish Marathon? And, we exchanged nice days. When she confirmed I was who I was, she, gave me the news and said that I should come in when I've returned so they could discuss high-risk pregnancy options with me. So I had to be deceptive to even get a diagnosis, and then I had to remain deceptive while they kind of talk to me about like what my options. I mean, it's good to have known the options, because essentially what my partner and I had, like I said, I didn't really want kids to begin with, but he's always been incredibly nurturing, and like to this day I think he'd be an amazing father. And it really bothers me that that's not something we can really, that's not a path that can be explored because of who I am. So my partner and I basically had said that like we're not gonna have kids, because even if I have a kid, like if I get pregnant fucking today at 34, 35, and I have the kid like 9 months from now, in 10 years when the kid is going to need to run around and like be active and whatever, I'm gonna be in a wheelchair more or less full time, and I am not going to be able to be a mother. And again, like, not wanting to have kids and not being able to have kids are two different things. It's not that I couldn't have kids, it's that if I had a kid, it would be a 50-50 chance of that kid having it. Like, that's how this illness works. It's me and my brother doesn't have it, I do, and I got it from my dad. My dad and his sister both have it. They got it from his mom. I don't know beyond that. And the high-risk pregnancy place basically told me they can, if I get pregnant, they can test the baby and like ahead of time to see if it has this, because there are certain markers they look for in genes. Basically, they look for but whatever. Essentially it's certain gene sequences, and a certain number of repeats of those sequences is what they look for, so they can do blood work and arrive at a diagnosis even like as soon as the baby has like a couple of cells. I say the baby. I'm pretty pro-choice, if I'm just saying the baby for like ease of conversation, but I don't think the baby, that's it. It's not that much more than a growth. But either way, once it has cells and blood and whatever to test, they can do a test, and if it has Ataxia, they can figure out a way to abort it. So it feels fucking icky. Also, to know that I already have Ataxia, so even if the kid doesn't, like, this whole thing of like being in a wheelchair full time by the time the kid is 10, like, that doesn't change. Like, that is still true. And like for my dad, like, stuff started and like every generation basically, it starts earlier and it starts a little more aggressive. So like for my grandmother, I think it started manifesting in her like late 40s or early 50s. For my father and his sister, I think it started manifesting like in their mid 40s. For me, it has started manifesting in my mid 30s. So if I had a kid that had ataxia, more than likely, it would start manifesting in their late 20s, early 30s. And like, for someone who didn't really want kids anyway, that feels hugely unethical in several ways. So that's family planning. I missed adding this in the video, but it's pretty important to me to be active politically as much as I can be, and I have been not having the easiest time going to voting booths and that kind of thing. So I've been exploring options for voting from home, and it turns out that Elections Ontario, if you organize it with them, just a little bit ahead of time, they can actually come to your home and collect your vote. Like, if you are unable to leave your premises for any reason. So that's super cool. I'm definitely going to be using that option whenever I can. I used it for the first time last year, and it was really, really great. Moving on to financial planning. I've already mentioned the issues around work. The problem is that there's a lot of problems, but one of the problems when you actually get a job, I've always had to work 2 or 3 times as hard as my male counterparts to be considered half as good. Even now in tabletops, like, I would argue that I show up with a certain presence, but I don't I'm not seeing this, and there's no malice or anything, but it's just kind of something that happens. People just don't consider me with the same level of gravitas as they would for someone else. So I frequently, all my life, really have always felt like I need to work 2 or 3 times as hard to be considered half as good. And that's even more so now that I have a visible disability, because now it's not, oh shit, my train missed a deadline. It's, oh shit, disabled people can't keep up. Yeah, it's kind of intense, because I mean that it's a normal human thing to, like, fuck up at work sometimes, even if you are as good at it as I try to be. Like, I really try to be S tier at work. Like, I work really hard. I spend a lot of time in development and personal and professional development. I would consider myself probably a really strong leader as well, because, like, I fundamentally believe that leading a team of strong individual contributors requires a completely different skill set than being a strong individual contributor yourself. And knowing that distinction has let me kind of develop into a strong leader, and I always try to lead with empathy in whatever I'm doing. So with regards to work, and again, no one's gonna fucking say it to you. No one's gonna say the words like, oh yeah, you're like the spokesperson for all disabled. No one's gonna fucking say it to you. Like, that's just not a thing. It's just something that'll happen in people's brains. And, like, you just aren't considered as seriously as your counterparts. So what in Canada, there are a few different government programs. They've mostly been kind of slashed because of who's in charge these days, the provincial level. We'll see. I may have to. My father had to retire in his early 50s. I may have to retire around then as well, probably earlier. I am really not okay with that. A lot of identity comes from someone who can work a certain way and pull on a certain, and like contribute to the house in a certain way. Until I got the diagnosis, a very, very serious conversation that my partner and I were having was, what if you were a stay-at-home husband? Like, what if you took care of it? Because you are so much more domestic, you are so much more nurturing than because I am not. I'm not a domestic person. Like, my partner used to make fun of it, to the point of, I've always been kind of clumsy, kind of messy, that kind of thing. And I used to tell him, like, you're gonna feel so fucking bad if this turns out to be like a neurological thing. Turns out he doesn't feel bad. Anyway. But that's not an avenue available to us anymore. Not just because of who I am, but because of the reality of the world we live in. I don't think we live in a place where single income households are generally a thing. They can be for some people, but broadly I don't think they are. The other thing I want to talk about is what this, so I mentioned this a little bit before, about sort of how it manifests physically. It's kind of like ELS or MS or Huntington's slower. Probably has the same length as ALS, actually, like time-wise, as, chronic and progressive. Except, ALS had Stephen Hawking. That is Ataxia, now has Bill Nye, as of last year, as a spokesperson, because I guess there's people in his family that have SCA. So we have a sexy spokesperson now too. For my non-American folks, Bill Nye is one of those famous scientist types. Like, I don't know his stuff, but I know who he is in pop culture. Mostly he's known for being like an educator and a science communicator for like slightly younger people. I think, like, getting them interested in sciences and that kind of thing. So, both in India, Neil deGrasse Tyson as like that famous scientist type. So he, as of last year, has been working with the American Ataxia Foundation, which I'll link in the description. Use of tech and accessibility devices. So, like I said, right now I'm using a walker to get around the house, and I use a manual wheelchair outside. I use a bench in the bathroom and like those stick-on handles in the bathroom as well to help me kind of navigate in and out of the shower. In terms of like gaming, I use a lot of like online dice rollers and stuff because I have a hard time like physically navigating some dice. Like, sometimes my hands work better than other times. So I have a lot of like beautiful physical dice, and honestly, if I wasn't as unsentimental and pragmatic as I am, I'd probably still keep buying dice. I'm at this stage, I'm just getting like specialty dice for special occasions and that kind of thing. So, for my last birthday, my partner got me like opalite dice from Norse Foundry, because opal's my birthstone, and I've always wanted gemstone dice. So I don't really buy like a ton of dice anymore, but I really like dice. But in terms of tech. I have been using a lot more digital stuff. Like I set my computer a lot, reading and watching stuff on YouTube, and like I don't know what other like accessibility and tools I right now, like I said, it's kind of, it's a rare disease. It's symptom management only. It's ongoing. It's degenerative, so chronic and progressive. So I kind of like keep evolving what I'm using. What I'm using today is not what I was using last year, and that's not what I'll use next year. I've worked in tech a lot, and I know that sort of as a society, we at humans in general, we tend to overestimate what we can do in the short term and severely underestimate what we can do in the long term. As an example, I will point to the Human Genome Project. I think in the late 80s, they said it would take about 20 years to map the entire human genome. That was completed, I think, 4 or 5 years ahead of schedule or something like that. Pretty cool. Again, it's not really affecting me so much, but like it just sort of speaks to that broader point I think I was trying to make. With regards to more accessibility text, voice to text, especially on Discord, has been kind of a game changer for me, and I use it multiple times a day. I used it this morning a couple times. Like I said, I tried out the electric wheelchair. I don't love it, but like I said, like there's a lot of funding for it, because you kind of just make do with what you have. A couple of years ago, actually, before my father passed away, he and I went to this like really cool mobility expo, and like there were a ton of very cool things, but like they're hideously expensive. They are not things that you can apply for like a ton of grants for. There are some grants you can get for it. So this is the thing, like these tools, there are tools that exist, but they are out of reach of like 99% of disabled people because of what they cost and how difficult it is to get them. Because like most disabled folks, from one reason or another, cannot hold down long-term high-paying job. That's just the reality of it. And like that's true of even able-bodied people these days, I would say. But it's significantly worse for folks with disabilities. So you could have the fucking Cadillac of wheelchairs, but most people probably aren't gonna be able to even like look at it beyond just being kind of wistful about it. But I will say, between the Human Genome Project, I saw a thing about them mapping the brain of a fruit fly and like being able to do some work with dementia and Alzheimer's patient, which is another thing that happens with Ataxia, apparently. No, apparently it definitely does. I've had issues with dementia a few more times than I'd like to admit, but it has happened. I'm fucking like not even 40 yet, man. These are old people things, you know? These are, and not just old people things, these are sick old people things. So, don't love it. Anyway, going back to medical technology, I do actually feel like it's leaping forward in pretty incredible ways, and I'm really hopeful that in 10 years there'll be an electric chair that I can actually comfortably use, because I'll be in a chair more or less full time at that point. So to give you kind of a real world example of just kind of making do, the chair that the electric wheelchair I've mentioned a few times, that was my dad's, and just to kind of real world it, and not just nebulously talk about it being expensive, thing was 25 grand. It was 25 grand, and because I didn't really have, like, manifested Ataxia at the time, I applied for basically every subsidy and every grant under the sun. I was able to get 18 grand covered, and the rest, that 7 grand, was a cost that my brother and I split. Thankfully, the wheelchair folks have dealt with this kind of thing, like, a lot, unfortunately. So they were able to give me a lot of really valuable instruction and direction. And that's actually what I want to say to people, is trust that experts are experts. Going back to the point about my sex life, I actually recently invested, kind of invested, did a lot of research and everything. I got a new vibrator, but the getting it, I basically talked to the rep there, and I told them about, like, all the limitations that I had with my body, and, like, what kind of stimulation I was looking for. And, like, they were able to kind of, like, really... So, this is the thing. It's incredibly embarrassing and fairly vulnerable, like this whole fucking video has been. But might be worth it. And hopefully, if nothing else, I feel like I have been brave in a way that I have not really felt in some time. You can leave whatever comments you want below, obviously, but, like, please don't call me brave. Please, if instinctively you want to commend my bravery and resilience, and please don't. It's hugely condescending, and, like, I know that you're coming from a good place, but that is the only specific thing I will say in this video that I think is probably broadly applicable. Like, we're not fucking children. We're adults. Our bodies just work a little differently. Like, don't be a fucking weirdo about it. Like, that's pretty much it. I don't know that I really have anything else that I want to say, except look at my wings, aren't they so pretty? Yeah. So that's all I have. Thank you so much for hanging out. I'm sorry if I made people uncomfortable. As I said, I will answer any questions that you have. I'm gonna link a couple of places that you can donate. Maybe read about Bill Nye being a spokesperson for Ataxia, like, if that's interesting to you, that kind of thing. I'm sure there's gonna be stuff that he and the Ataxia Foundation is doing for International Ataxia Awareness Day, 25th of September. Thanks. See you soon. Bye.